My girlfriend announced she needed a pause to sort out her true desires. I replied, "Take whatever time you require." 7 days later, she cut off all contact with me and began sharing posts about recovery while crashing at her former boyfriend's apartment. I kept quiet. 2 months on, she removed the block exactly when my pictures surfaced, showing me clasping hands with another woman on the boulevards of Paris. Her texts poured in the instant she recognized the person. The conclusion arrived on a Tuesday evening, not with fireworks, but with the soft, superior snap of a shutting door. My partner of 3 years, Jennifer, pulled me onto the sofa and delivered the monologue. I could sense she'd practiced it in her vehicle en route from the office. She wore that identical expression of forced, artificial earnestness she displayed when preparing to exchange a present I'd selected for her. "I simply feel like I'm in an odd spot at the moment," she began, her tone gentle and belittling. "I require a pause, merely some space alone to determine what I truly desire." I remained speechless, simply observing her. For months, I'd sensed an expanding gap between us, a sort of foundational decay that remains invisible yet palpable in the supports. The midnight messages she'd conceal, the abrupt weekend outings with acquaintances I'd never encountered, the manner she'd reminisce about her ex, Alex, with a wistful affection that was beginning to resemble an ongoing affair. She continued speaking, covering all the standard phrases. She felt adrift. She needed to discover herself. She wasn't certain if she was prepared for the following phase. It was a masterfully composed, utterly empty act intended to keep me on standby without fully extinguishing the flame. She sought a free pass, not a separation. Once finished, I posed the sole question that counted. "What does a pause entail, Jennifer?" "It simply means we're apart for a short period," she explained, her tone laced with pretended wisdom. "We're at liberty to date others if we choose, but we're not finished. We're merely on hold." There it was, the proof. She had him ready, her ex, Alex. This entire monologue was merely the preparatory step for reigniting that past spark while retaining me as a fallback option. She wasn't terminating the connection. She was locking in a reserve strategy. Most men, I imagine, would have exploded. They would have shouted, insisted on learning the identity of the other man. But I was simply exhausted. The weariness struck me like a tangible impact. The weariness of perpetually sensing I was being handled, of treading carefully, of understanding instinctively that I served more as a utility than a companion. So I merely nodded. "All right," I stated, my voice steady. "Take whatever time you require." The ease that washed over her features was so complete it bordered on offensive. She'd achieved it. She possessed her liberty, without repercussions. "Oh, thank you for being so compassionate," she remarked, her tone abruptly bright and joyful. "I knew you'd handle this maturely." "Naturally," I responded. "So, where will you reside during this quest for personal insight?" Her grin wavered. "What do you mean?" "I'll remain here, of course." "No," I declared, rising from the sofa, the choice now as firm and immovable as stone. "You won't. A pause means we are apart, which means we do not share a home. This is my residence. My signature is on the agreement. You, starting now, are no longer my partner, which means you are merely a visitor whose permission has just lapsed. I'll be replacing the locks tomorrow. I recommend you begin gathering your items." The expression of sheer, bewildered astonishment on her face was the initial genuine, unfeigned feeling she had displayed all evening. She had believed she was suspending me. She had no clue she had just activated the release mechanism on her whole cushy existence. Update 1. The evening that ensued was a chorus of her incredulity. After I instructed her to gather her things, she simply gazed at me for a solid minute, her mind restarting. Then followed the rapid, intensifying phases of a self-centered person discovering they've surrendered dominance. First arrived the dismissal. "You're not serious. You're just reacting emotionally because I was truthful with you." Then the fury. "You can't evict me. I have entitlements. I reside here." Then the begging. "Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I didn't intend it. I don't require a pause. Let's simply pretend I never mentioned it." I didn't respond. I just proceeded to the hallway storage, retrieved a pile of vacant relocation cartons from my previous shift, and began positioning them in the center of the family room. It was a silent, conclusive declaration. She passed the night on the sofa after an unsuccessful effort to persuade me to allow her into our sleeping area. The following morning I departed from my job early. As I exited, I informed her she had until the close of the day to collect her possessions because a lock specialist was booked for 5 o'clock. Her reaction was to intensify the conflict to the sole arena where she felt dominant, online platforms. By the time I reached my workplace, my device was vibrating. She had restricted me on every channel. Then she launched her open display. Her Instagram, formerly a tribute to our joyful existence, transformed into a sanctuary for her recently claimed suffering. The initial upload was a monochrome self-portrait of her appearing misty-eyed with a subtitle that was a triumph of indirect hostile invention. Occasionally, the most difficult choice and the correct choice are identical. Selecting myself even when it pains. Her companions, a faithful group of supporters, overwhelmed the responses. So courageous, darling. His misfortune. You're radiant. Independence suits you. We never cared for him regardless. Forward and upward. The storyline was established. I was the antagonist, the sentimentally impaired adult who couldn't cope with her path of self-affection. I was the one who had concluded matters, not her. But I possessed an internal informant. Her closest companion, a lady named Kate, was also, covertly, my ally. Kate stood apart from the remainder of their circle. She was reserved, perceptive, and possessed a foundation of integrity that rendered her an odd match in their assembly of sharp-tongued women. She and I had connected over a common appreciation for classic films and a shared unvoiced frustration with Jennifer's endless theatrics. Kate messaged me that midday. She's informing everyone you suffered a mental collapse and expelled her without cause, just so you're aware. I anticipated as much, I answered. Where is she currently? She's at Alex's residence, Kate typed. She headed directly there from your place. She's behaving like she just claimed a prize. Naturally she was. The pause was merely a thinly veiled shift of resources. I remained mute. I didn't justify myself. I didn't contact shared acquaintances to share my perspective. I just allowed her to construct her tale, aware that the taller she erected her structure of falsehoods, the more gratifying it would be to observe its collapse. While she was enacting the role of the sorrowful protagonist digitally, I was calmly and systematically removing her from my world. I bundled the remainder of her items, every final ornament and garment, and placed them in a rental storage facility I secured under her name. I mailed her the access device and the invoice. I terminated her additional payment card. I altered my contact number. And then roughly a month into her magnificent display of mending, a chance presented itself. A significant undertaking my building firm was overseeing in Paris had encountered a chain of vital setbacks. The primary site supervisor had resigned, and they required someone to travel there, assume command, and rescue the whole multi-million euro enterprise from crumbling. It was a 3-month intense task. My superior proposed it to me as a test. I viewed it as a getaway, a fresh metropolis, a new challenge to tackle, a clear separation from the debris of my prior existence. I accepted without delay, but I harbored a notion, a subtle, mischievous little notion that started to shape in the recesses of my thoughts. Kate had been discussing for years her wish to visit Paris. She had majored in art history during university, and it was her aspiration to view the Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, all of it. But she'd never possessed the funds or the opportunity. I phoned her. I described the task. I mentioned my firm was housing me in a spacious 2-bedroom flat in the core of the city. I noted the second sleeping area was vacant, and I stated that if she could arrange transport to Paris, she had accommodations for as long as she desired. There was an extended quiet on the line. I could detect the mechanisms shifting in her mind. What about Jennifer? She eventually inquired, her voice scarcely audible. This concerns nothing with Jennifer, I said, which was only partially untrue. This is regarding you and an ambition you've held for years. It's a vast, unoccupied flat, Kate. I could benefit from the companionship. She informed me she would consider it. The following day, she rang back. Her voice brimmed with a fresh, anxious thrill. I purchased an airline ticket, she declared. And just like that, without intent, I had recruited the key observer in Jennifer's small romantic drama. The contest had just become far more intriguing. Update 2. The 2 months I passed in Paris with Kate were akin to emerging from an extended, delirious vision. Removed from the persistent, subtle drone of Jennifer's theatrics, I felt authentic for the first time in ages. The labor was demanding, but it was genuine. I was repairing something concrete, something physical, an issue I could resolve with reason and effort. And Kate? She was an epiphany. We were two escapees from the identical, sentimental wreckage. And in the serene avenues of an unfamiliar city, we discovered a rescue vessel. We devoted our weekends strolling through galleries, becoming disoriented in the curving lanes of Montmartre, and conversing for hours in tiny, packed cafes. She revealed everything. She described how draining it was serving as Jennifer's closest companion, a position that was less about camaraderie and more about acting as an unpaid aide, a counselor, and an endless spectator. She disclosed Jennifer had been involved with her ex Alex for months prior to our split, and that the pause was a meticulously planned scheme to move from my monetary backing to his, without a single day of independence. She mentioned Jennifer had been ridiculing me to their circle for years, labeling me her beginner partner, her reliable yet dull choice. In exchange, I shared about the subtle, advancing isolation in my bond with Jennifer, the sensation of being a supplier but not an equal. We weren't merely two individuals developing affection. We were two collaborators, at last exchanging observations and grasping the full scale of the trickery we had both endured. We developed love gradually, and then suddenly. It wasn't a recovery fling. It was an acknowledgement. It was encountering a person who communicated the same dialect, who cherished the same principles, who perceived the world not as a platform, but as an endeavor to construct jointly. As our stay in Paris was nearing its end, with the undertaking restored to progress and our departure date approaching, I recognized it was moment. Jennifer, based on the sporadic captures Kate would still receive from her other contacts, was not experiencing the splendid, emancipated life she had envisioned. Her connection with Alex had disintegrated after about a month when he discovered she anticipated him to sustain the identical standard of living I had offered, a standard he was neither prepared nor capable to maintain. She was now residing on her parents' sofa, her recovery path having halted in a cul-de-sac of joblessness and tedium. She had, I knew, been anticipating me to return pleading. In her view, the pause was an evaluation of my commitment, and she was merely awaiting me to fail it by imploring her comeback. Her absence from my online presence was, to her, an indication that I was devastated and anticipating. It was time to provide her an indication. I revived my long inactive Instagram profile. I uploaded a solitary image. It was a snapshot I had captured just days earlier, an unposed photo of me and Kate, grasping hands and chuckling as we traversed the Pont d'Arts, the renowned Lovelock Bridge. The declining afternoon light was reflecting off the amber masonry of the structures in the background. It was an ideal image, an image of absolute, unfiltered joy. The subtitle was straightforward. Occasionally, you must traverse a sea to discover what was always nearby. Then I performed the ultimate, most crucial action. I removed the restriction on Jennifer. I wanted to ensure she viewed it. I wanted her to view it immediately. Final update. The initial message reached my device exactly 4 minutes after I removed her block. It was a lone, capitalized term, a virtual cry of shock. What? Then arrived the flood. It was an overwhelming surge of raw, undiluted, self-absorbed anger, a hectic, frantic bid to recapture a storyline that was no longer under her control. Who is that? Where are you? What is this? Is that Kate? My closest companion? My sibling? You're in Paris with my sibling? After what you inflicted on me. Are you deranged? You were meant to be awaiting me. This was a pause. You deceived me. You both deceived me. The double standard was so staggering. It was nearly artistic. She, the lady who had departed me to join her ex, was charging me with disloyalty. She, the lady who had handled her alleged closest companion like a paid helper, was now calling upon the holy ties of companionship. She attempted to rally everyone against us. She phoned her parents, yelling that I had manipulated and abducted their other child, that Kate was a disloyal betrayer. But it failed. Kate had already contacted them. She had disclosed everything. She had shared about Jennifer's infidelity, about her deceptions, about the years of psychological mistreatment she had suffered as Jennifer's closest companion. For the first time, her parents were learning the raw reality, not from me, but from their own child. And they were appalled. Jennifer's final desperate move was to attempt ruining my profession. She dispatched a lengthy, incoherent message to my firm's human resources team, a creation of total fabrication that depicted me as an erratic hunter who had exploited a business journey to entice a susceptible young lady to Paris. But I was ready. I had already provided my superior a complete work-related summary of the circumstances before even departing for Paris. He understood I was on a pause. He knew the details of my involvement with Jennifer. And more crucially, he knew that the Paris undertaking, which had been on the brink of disastrous collapse, was now progressing ahead of timeline and below cost, a huge profession-shaping victory for me. He passed her message to our legal team, who issued her a courteous yet intimidating stop and desist notice. Ultimately, she possessed nothing. She had revealed her cards, and she had failed in the most impressive manner imaginable. She had taken a pause to uncover what she truly desired, and in the course, she had forfeited everything. Her partner, her closest companion, the admiration of her parents, and her whole social network. It's been a year now. Kate and I are cohabiting in a fresh home we acquired on the opposite side of the city. We are marrying in the spring, a modest, serene event with just our allies and relatives. Her parents are thrilled. They cherish me. They regard me as the man who not only rescued their child from an existence of silent obedience, but who also eventually, irrevocably, resolved their Jennifer issue. Jennifer, from what I've learned, is still dwelling at home. She's employed in some monotonous sales position. Her online presence is deserted. She is, by all reports, entirely and completely isolated.